So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our St. Paul Speaker Series for the month of June. We have these on the last Friday of every month. And this session, we're going to have a talk by our colleagues from Zambia National Building Society that will be led by Ms. Cynthia Mwila, who is actually a colleague of mine in the Rotary Club. She's outgoing president for Rotary Club of Lusaka and holds some directorships on boards. She's a housing finance specialist. She's a seasoned banker, a certified financial planner, and she's also a former diasporan. So this talk is going to resonate with people in the diaspora as well as people that are based in Zambia. And now she's at Zambia National Building Society. And she has with her Ms. Esther Katongo, also working for Zambia National Building Society, so they'll be able to answer our questions. The St. Paul Speaker Series is held by alumni or ex-Santos people, as we call ourselves, that went to St. Paul Secondary School in Mulungushi, Kabwe, with our counterpart friends from Chipembi. They show up and other friends as well. So with that introduction, Cynthia, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope I'm audible, and just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. I'll start. I know you've introduced me, and thank you so much for that introduction. I'll switch on my camera briefly so that you can see who I am, and I've got Esther and Mwila, and I'll also ask them to do the same, and then we'll switch up and go into the presentation. I'll just 2 seconds. What it looks like. I'm not sure if you're able to see me, but my camera is showing a blank. Are you? As I mentioned, my name is Cynthia Mwila. I am head banking and mortgages at Zambia National Building Society. So the presentation this afternoon is really just to talk around some of the opportunities can assist members of the diaspora. And I think I mentioned that I'm very passionate about this space, both from a professional point of view, because I believe that we really have a unique offering in the market. But at a personal level, I lived in the diaspora for many, many years. I lived in the UK, and I've still lived longer outside of Zambia than I have in Zambia. Say is that I draw from my own experience and some of the opportunities that perhaps I missed, some of the things that were not so clear. And I try to bring that into my work so that at least where the clarity can be created, I try to do that. So I'll probably be speaking, you'll notice, interchangeably between my personal experience and also from a professional point of view. But at this point, Esther, I don't know if you could just switch your camera. And Mwila just to say hello, and then we'll go straight into the presentation. Thank you.
Ms. Mwila, before you go on, there's a raised hand here with Ivy.
Yes, Musonda, I was wondering whether maybe it would be helpful to turn off the camera. It looks like the bandwidth is strained when the cameras are on. I don't know whether it's on my end.
Or including
maybe others are here.
Okay, I'll turn off mine.
Yeah, and maybe the presenter could also turn off the camera as well to preserve bandwidth.
Okay. Yeah, Cynthia, maybe if you turn down your camera, it might work in terms of bandwidth.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so just I've switched off. Is it off? Or is it still on? Is that better? Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So I'll go straight into the presentation. I hope you
It
can
looks
hear
like
me.
it's still on.
Just
turning off the start video icon there. We'll turn it off. Should preserve some bandwidth.
the camera.
You know where you have the start video icon there on your device? If you just tap it and you have it crossed, whatever, then that should take care of.
Yeah, I think I have a challenge because it's showing me off.
So as the admin, you can do that. You can turn off her video.
Let me see. Stop video.
Yes, if you tap her video.
I did. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I think it kicked her out.
Yeah, it looks like connectivity is a problem, but maybe when she comes in, just being off camera does help a bit.
Okay. So I think we have somebody else from ZNBS as well. Ms. Hakayobe, are you from ZNBS?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. In Lusaka also?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So this is a question that might come up at the end, but do you guys compete with CEC?
I wouldn't say we compete. I think we have different offerings.
Okay.
Yes. So I think our offerings are different. We probably coexist because I think we probably try to serve a different market than they do. Yes, and I think in terms of volumes, we don't have a waiting list as they do because I think theirs is more funded. We kind of are able to sustain ourselves, if I can put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so different offerings.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys focus on residential or commercial properties only, or anything?
No, so recently we actually now went into commercial as well. So we are able to lend on commercial property, but besides that, we are also able to lend to commercial entities as well. So we've included that now. Yeah, just to, because I think now we've grown, so we are able to take care of that market as well.
Oh, nice. Somebody asked me to ask you if you do businesses with trusts, because some people don't want to have properties in their name, so they set up a trust. Especially if they have young kids, they'll be like, "Oh, I want this trust to have this," and becomes mature. When the kids become mature, then they can take it over.
Yeah, so I as long as the trust is sustainable, of course we would assess that. Except I think when it depends. So if say the property is in trust of the children who are below 18, unfortunately we can't lend on that because again they're minors, they can't consent. So for purposes of borrowing, unless now they just maybe remove them because yeah, legally they are not supposed to use such a property because there are minors involved. Yeah, so for borrowing purposes, we advise that they probably maybe include them on a property that they don't intend to use for borrowing.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice.
But maybe as a trust itself, they could borrow as long as the property is not in trust. So as a trust, they can borrow probably as long as there's income inflow.
Yeah, I think that's what the question was. Just because the trust kind of shifts ownership to the trust itself rather than to all these individuals that are inside of it.
Yeah.
That's
so
pretty
we can
just can do that. Okay. I have too many questions. Do you still own Society House?
Okay. I don't know when that should. Well, it's
No, you don't.
you know what? So it's in the public. So no, we don't. I think we did a joint venture of renovating and everything. But I think along the way it was decided we could then let it go. So we did. So it's owned by NAPSA now.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yes.
I kind of like the building. I like the parking access in the back, and you know, the different mall looking floors that you guys have there. It's really well done. I like it.
Okay. No, we are still operating in the building. I'm actually positioned in the same building. So, but of course, we're looking to get better. So it's not just letting go, but trying also to see if we can get something better positioned.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
So does anybody else have questions before I go on? Because I have another question. I know we'll be talking about programs to benefit individuals, but okay, we'll go with Heather's question first. So the question in the chat is, would my account from the 80s be traceable? If somebody had an account with ZNBS in the 80s, would that be traceable now?
Probably not, because ideally we, as banks, we are expected to hold information for not less than 10 years before we can, you know, close an account if it's inactive or anything like that. Probably not. Why? Because we've also transitioned, we've changed our systems, we've improved. So if an account was dormant in the old system, we actually didn't carry it over. It was expected that the customer then, if they are still interested, they open a new account. So obviously also, I think in terms of KYC, so many things could have changed from the 80s. So we expect, they submit latest information.
Yeah, I sit on a board of a credit union. Every month we go through dormant accounts, and we make it a point to contact those people by phone, email, and letters. And if they don't, then they forfeit the money to the state. So it does happen quite often.
Yes, and of course, we are expected to, obviously, if there was a balance there, we would not close the account unless maybe because of the charges that was depleted. Otherwise, if there's money, that's the customer's money, somehow we have to make sure that if they came back, they can access it, even if the account then would probably put it in suspense. But of course, we're also expected to get in touch with the customer and ensure that they advise where we can then send that money.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think in the States, the money gets forfeited to the state itself. If you're not participating in any banking activities, including just swiping your ATM card, yeah, you lose your money. So does Cynthia say what's going on with her computer? Do you know what's going on with the presentation?
Okay, so I'm supposed to pick up the presentation. I think she's still having challenges, so I'm just waiting for her to email it. She's emailing it to me. I will do the presentation.
Okay, perfect. I didn't even get your job at ZNBS.
Okay, so I am in the mortgage section. I would say I manage the mortgage section.
Okay.
So as I said, we have branches across the country, but so this is like call ourselves the the center. So we basically then make sure that we handle all the processes, make sure that they are completed. So basically we manage that and ensure that we handle the processes to conclusion. So I manage that.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So this might be in the presentation, but what do people need to present to you in order for them to get a mortgage?
Okay, so well, so I understand we have from the audience, we have Zambia, people in Zambia as well as outside.
Yes.
So we basically have requirements for Zambians in Zambia, as well as, so we deliberately then also created a diaspora mortgage, just to make sure that we can also service Zambians who are living outside the country. So, but I think in terms of differences of what we require, they are very few, obviously, because the other person lives outside the country, but very few, if any. So I think the basic ones, of course, we need a title because this is a mortgage. And it depends whether someone is buying, are they building? So if you're building, of course, we expect that you own some piece of land, and there's proof of ownership, which is the title deed. If you're buying again, you approach the vendor and they need to share that copy of the title with you. So basically we need to have that proof of ownership of the property, whether by the person constructing or the person who's selling the property. The other things that we need, of course, is verification of income. So we would, of course, are interested in knowing what the source of income is, and that income should be verified, which is also one of the determinants on what we're able to lend to an individual. How much are they earning? How much are we able to lend to them? Besides that, also we do value the property itself. So the property also will determine how much one is able to borrow. And of course, the tenure. So for Zambians living in Zambia, we go up to 25 years. For our diaspora customers, we go up to 15 years. And of course, it depends, obviously, different circumstances. If one is on contract, we are still able to lend, but they are obviously depending on whether they have a gratuity or not. We may lend for a longer period, longer than their contract period. And then, of course, they commit that once the contract is, if the contract is not renewed, they're able to still offset the mortgage balance. So we are able to do that. So I think those are the main ones that we ask for. It's verification of income, proof of ownership for the property. Yeah, and of course, we will assess based on one's circumstance, whether they are and of course, not just employment, formal employment, but we also look at other income as well. So we could factor it in if you have a salary. We can also take rental income as long as we can verify it. So if you don't have a salary, you have your own business, we can assess as long as the income again is consistent and it's something that we can verify. We're able to consider it. So whether it's for investment or you're just building property for yourself, we are able to assist that.
Okay. Yeah, there was actually a question about business income, like what kind of business income you'd approve. So I guess it's something that has to be registered with ZRA. Is that part of the calculation? Like if somebody doesn't have a tip in, can they access the loans or the mortgages?
So a tip-in is now a requirement for an account opening or any transactions that we make with the bank. So, and I think ZRA has a portal, so one is actually able to do it from wherever you're based. So ideally, you should be able to register and be able to get a tip-in because it's a requirement. So if you're getting a mortgage from ZNBS, we pay you in an account with ZNBS. So ideally, you should open an account with us. And we are not restricting, of course, we would not ask someone who's in the diaspora to move their salary here, but at least you have that account. And then whatever mode we agree, you should be able to send your repayments through that account to us.
Okay, I think that kind of answers the next question that's in the chat. It said, what if somebody is self-employed in the diaspora? Are there any different terms?
Okay, I think the point is really just verification, whether it's a company, that if it exists there, because it's as good as someone works there. So as long as there's verification of yes, so we separate, and because the company is based elsewhere, can we separate the company from the individual? Because in this case, we'll be lending to the individual. So if there's that separation, we are able to. So if you have a personal account, you pay yourself an allowance, or is it a salary? There's proof of that, we are able to lend. So ideally it's proof, and we ask for bank statements for 6 months. So in the case where you are one of the, you own that company, we may ask for a bit more. So besides this, the pay slip and introductory letter, we may want to look at how the business is doing. So maybe we'll say, can we see the company statement? And just maybe the ownership of the company. So we would just like maybe to look at the profile for the company, so that we're able to then see, okay, so will the company sustain paying you this allowance or salary for the period of the loan? Yeah.
Okay, perfect. You mentioned the different terms, 25 years and 15 years, depending on where you're domiciled. Well, what are the rates? The mortgage rates?
Okay, so the rate, so it's 16% for an individual, 16% if it's outright purchase, home improvement, or just equity release. If you have a complete property and you just want to release some equity on it, it's 16%. But for construction, the interest is 18%. So it's slightly higher on the construction case. But also what we're able to do on construction is that we were able to approve an amount based on the BOQ. And then the customer can draw down in stages. And then for outright purchase, which is at 16%, maybe the attraction for us is that we don't ask the customer to put up a percentage before they get the mortgage. So we are actually able to give you 100% of the value on the mortgage, except you just add a percentage. So it's say 16%, we'll give it to you at 17% because we have to ensure the difference. So we reinsure the difference on your behalf.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting that you have to do that. So the mortgage is insured?
So the reinsurance is because we are only allowed, ideally, we should only give 75% of the market value.
Right.
Then we thought people are coming to borrow because they don't have the money. So we should be able to go 100%. So we then insure the 25%. That's why we're giving you a percentage higher, yes. But the mortgage also is insured. The mortgage is insured. So we have credit life. So you insure your life, the credit life. And then the property is insured as well. So during the tenure of the mortgage, we expect that one takes up insurance. We do that on your behalf. Again, we've negotiated because it's a group thing. So the premiums are quite manageable. So we do that on behalf as well.
That's very nice you do that. It lowers the barriers to entry. There's the raised hand. Ivy, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So the question is on the interest rate for outright purchase. You say that you add a percentage for insuring the loan. Is there a point when you don't need to insure the loan? Let's say somebody puts down 20%. Does that take away the reinsurance cost, or will you need to reinsure no matter what?
No. So yes, you've got the option to. So we would advise you what our valuation is, because we do our own valuation once someone puts up an application. So we advise you what the values are like, the 75% which would normally take, and then if you have the other part that you can then pay towards the purchase, then we don't have to issue it.
Also, if I put down 25%, then that takes away the 1% insurance extra fee, extra cost, right?
Yes. So then we will not charge you the extra.
Okay.
I don't know whether I should even make the.
Yeah, there was a question in my direct messages about PMI. So in the US, what you're describing is called PMI, property mortgage insurance. I think that's what it's called, and they use it for if somebody didn't have enough down payment. So that's how so I think it's the same thing that you're describing.
Yeah, probably. Though I think we only have one institution offering it, so we were actually lucky that we could find that, because most people would then back out if they didn't have the difference. But at least now we're able to service those who can't afford the full amount.
Yeah, no, that's pretty nice. You guys do that. Well, what about default? If somebody defaults, what happens? Okay,
so obviously we hope that there's no default, but if it comes to that, we will of course engage the customer. So it's a long process for us as well. We engage the customer. There's provision for you to restructure the facility if maybe your income has just reduced, or for some unforeseen circumstance, you're not able to make the repayment we had initially agreed. So we engage you, we give you options, unless now we reach a point where there is no willingness, that's what we call it, where there is no willingness to pay. That's when we would go to repossession and all that. But it's a long process. It's not something that we also want to get into. So that's why we keep engaging the customer at every point when they default. Of course, it's the 3 months, and then we engage. If nothing, then we will go that route where we would then, okay, we'll sell the property, but our lawyers would engage you as well to make sure that you. And of course, you have to go to court, and that decision has to be made by the judge to actually sell the property. So there has to be unwillingness. You completely just say, you know what, go ahead, then we'll sell, yes. But we give you options. Do you want to restructure? Can we extend the tenure? What's your source of income now? How much can you afford? And we see if it will still, something that we can structure with you, and you should be able to continue paying the facility. Because the law actually protects a borrower like that. So we still engage.
Yeah, I mean, that's every lender's nightmare for sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
no, even it's a long process, so we don't want to get into it.
Yeah, you don't want guys just coming, misuse your money, and then they bounce like that. That's not good. So your rates seem to be lower than the banks. Is that the fact, or it's not? Your rates at 16%. Did we lose me?
Hi, good afternoon. This
Hello.
is Cynthia.
Cynthia
I am so sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries.
My sincere apologies. I tried everything and it just wasn't working. So I hope I can still join in the conversation and pick up from where Esther left off. You were asking about the rates?
Yes.
Okay, so just to put a bit of context, I think maybe a step back, and I don't know if we covered it, but because of the way we are structured and our core mandate, which was around the provision of housing for Zambians, we are compelled to try and be as affordable as possible in this market. And I think one of the things I continually come up against is a lot of people who are out there in the diaspora comparing the rates outside, which are usually in single digits, to what it is in Zambia. Not so long ago, the average rates were sitting around 25+%. And what we've seen in the last 6 months is the rates come down. There's been a steady push, but if you look comparatively to other markets, you'll still see it's considerably higher. And I think the starting point is the monetary policy rate, which is a lot higher. So if you're looking at 9.5, for example, you're already on the back foot. And then as financial institutions, we have to price for the risk. So there's usually a 3 to 4% risk element that is priced in. And then you start to look at the cost of funds. So that's just a very brief reason why the rates are a little bit, well, significantly higher in Zambia if you're comparing to more developed markets. But as Zambia National Building Society, firstly, we are the lowest in the market. There are other players who are sitting around the same rate, maybe one other. However, in terms of the total offering, we try to make it more affordable for customers, not just from the interest rate perspective, but even the way we price around our arrangement fee and what goes into that. So if you allow me just a second, I'll give you an example. Our arrangement fee is sitting at 5%. If you look at the average mortgage provider in the market, they'll tell you their arrangement fee is 2%. But in that 5%, what we are covering is a 1%, which is a statutory fee. So anyone going through the mortgage process will have to pay that. And that goes to the Ministry of Lands. So we just package it as part of the fee to make it easier for the customer. And then in that 5%, we have another 1% on top of the statutory fee, which goes to the conveyancing side. So we offer an in-house legal service. And then on top of that, we have another 1.5%, which goes to the valuation side. So you're not going to be paying over and above for a valuer on top of that. So it's all encompassing. And then what is our actual arrangement fee is 1.5%. So it can seem confusing, but we do it. One, it's more convenient for customers. So to keep the cost down, we have the services in-house. The only time there'll be another external vendor is, for example, when it's a full conveyancing, you're buying a house from someone else, there'll be their part, which they will need to deal with their lawyer. But otherwise we cover the whole process. So it's all encompassing. So that is another way we try to keep the whole affordable agenda aspect. And we offer other incentives, which, for example, you can get a 90-day repayment holiday if you're getting a construction mortgage with us. Those are just some of the things. But as the building society, we realize that one other aspect to affordable housing is the component of the cost of land and the cost of building. So we also play a role there. So we partner with a number of developers who are in the affordable housing space so that we can offer our clients a holistic solution. So for customers in the diaspora, it must be a nightmare to try and, if you want to invest and you don't live here, it's a nightmare to try and find where do you invest, what type of property. But with us, we already have MOUs. We do the due diligence so that you know you're as assured as you can be. And then you can tap into any one of our partners. So those are just some examples of some of the things we do. We also have land banks around the country that we've been acquiring from the councils. And what we're trying to do there is offer serviced plots, because the cost of land is largely driven by the bulk services, water, sewage, electricity. So we're coming in to say, look, if we can reduce those costs and offer those to our customers, we can keep the cost of land down. So something that you will start to see from us, we're marketing some land in Chilanga, and it's really ideal for customers in the diaspora that want to get something not too far from Lusaka, but it's sort of within. And that is one of the affordable housing projects that we have. So I just wanted to give the context. The rates are very important. We won't take away from that, but they're not the only factor around affordability. And then my last point, if you allow me, when I talk to people in the diaspora, one thing I always emphasize in every presentation I do, even the ones you might see online, is that you need to be sure you're comparing like for like. So if you're comparing, I'll talk about the UK because that's what I'm familiar with, where the base rate is somewhere around, you know, your average mortgage rate is sitting around, okay, I know they've been going up recently, but 5%. It's not a comparable market. So you cannot compare the 5% with the 16%. You're comparing apples with pears. And I think that is one of the major hindrances that people trying to invest or to buy property come across, because they're thinking, look, I can get a mortgage in the UK for 6%. Why would I invest back home? But the reality is a lot of people can afford the actual repayments, but they can't fully get a mortgage in the UK, for example, because you'll be required to put down whether it's 30% or 20%. And if you're buying an average property somewhere £700,000, 20% is quite significant. But with us, you'll be able to afford those repayments. So that is another reason. So you've got to look at what would your $1,000 a month get you. For me, that is a better comparison. If you are getting a mortgage and the equivalent right now, the rate is sort of up and down, but if we use an average of 18, just to make it a little bit easier, you know, to a dollar, what would you be getting? What type of mortgage would you get for $1,000 or £1,000? And in what kind of area? It's a middle income area. Whereas if you then said, look, I have $1,000, what type of property would that get you? What returns would you get in the US? So for me, those are things I speak passionately about because I think it is a better way of comparing. And then you start to look at your return on investment over what period of time. That's a slightly different discussion, but I just wanted to touch on that. Don't let the discussion around rates be the reason why you choose not to invest. It's one of the mistakes I made. Something I regret, and I always talk about it because I think it's something you have to factor in. So I'll pause here, and I hope I've made some sense.
Yes, you really have. And I don't know if anybody has some questions, because I have a few. Any questions? Okay, I have a question about the land banks. So are these already surveyed plots that you just go and buy a plot? And who do you buy it from? In terms of conveyancing, who's giving you the title?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I was talking about the land banks that you've been buying from the councils, and then you service them with utilities. The question was, are these plots ready to buy? And who do you buy it from? As in, who does the title exchange? Where is the title coming from?
I don't know if you're able to hear me. Were you
Yes.
asking about who gets the title?
Yes, I was asking if the plots in the land banks that you guys have, are they ready to purchase? And
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So the one in Chilanga is, I think we're getting there. We're almost ready. We've actually done up the road. We use the leverage that we have because we're wholly government owned. So we have access to the likes of ZNS, Zambia National Service, and then it may go cost. So we are keeping how much the land is, but it's way below market pricing for the reason that we're driving affordable housing. So if you get a mortgage with us, you'll get the below market price. If you coming to just purchase cash, then we'll price it more at market level. So just to answer your question, that one is probably the one that is the most, within the next couple of months, we've already started. And what happens is that we will do everything. We will subdivide, we will hand you over a service plot with a title. Because in Zambia, obviously, you cannot get a mortgage unless you have property on title. And approximately, I would say now about 70% of land is not on title. And the government, which did have some challenges, but it's progressing. So we work very closely with the Ministry of Lands. The other thing is we are the only provider at the moment that can offer a mortgage on what we call an occupancy license. So it's not title, but it's issued by the council. So there's quite a bit of land that is on, but we will provide a facility against that. And we will help where we can our customers, the banks that we've been acquiring. So we've got land in Mongu, we've got land in Mansa, we've got land in Kalumbila. So, and the other difference that is a bit unique is that we are one of the providers, I think few, if not the only, that is able to lend and provide a mortgage literally anywhere in Zambia. All we ask is that, the property is habitable, it's on title, it's got an occupancy license, it's got the documentation. Most providers will say Lusaka, Copperbelt, a long line of rail, but the expertise that we have, so we understand these of our surveyors, and the fact that we're driving affordable housing means that we need to be everywhere where the people are. So we try as much as possible to book mortgages in Yimba. We have provided facilities. So we've got that expertise. So I hope that that helps. But we do partner with developers, and we also partner with realtors and real estate agents, carefully vetted, where we think we have some synergies. We recently launched a partnership with Shares in Property. Their focus is the diaspora, and we thought it's unique because they're looking at middle to top end properties. And we feel this is a sweet spot for the diaspora. So it's easier if we have customers who are looking for property, we can use some of those strategic partners. But we also have partners who focus more on low income housing, low cost. It is also a big thing in Zambia right now because especially post-COVID, it's an opportunity. People come into certain areas, they're regenerating, up and coming. Kalingalinga now we cannot afford. It's really coming up. So people have gone in there and recognized that even though people can't afford their own houses, they work and they get income. So it's an opportunity, and they have very few maintenance needs. So it's low cost housing. So it's housing that derives value for you if you buy it in bulk. And the other thing that is coming up a lot more is boarding houses. So I'm just giving you these random examples to show you that we're in the game of being an expert. I think one thing you'll find that's different about us is we are a true construction mortgage provider. Other institutions will say they're in it, they'll dabble a little bit. It's high risk, And that is why most institutions shy away from construction. What they will offer you is equity release. So where you've got a property in Zambia already, you can get a mortgage and you can take that money and build elsewhere. And that is fine. But if you don't have a property, or if you have bare land, we can finance even bare lands today. And why is that important? Because when we look at the stats, 90% of home ownership in Zambia is through self-build. Most people will build incrementally, and that is because the cost of housing is very high. So we pride ourselves in being an institution that will offer you a mortgage. If you want to buy a complete house, you can get it from us. If you want to build incrementally, we can get it from us. If the property is partially complete, we will still finance it. Even if you don't have a structure, we will finance bare land.
That's a lot of programs that you guys have. Anybody have a question? Because I have a question. So this is just a random question before my actual question. You mentioned Kalingalinga. So what's going on there is it's being gentrified. Huh?
Yes, it's an interesting area. Like I said, even, I don't know the last time some of you were in Zambia, but I remember growing up, even that Friday's corner is no longer there.
Absolutely,
So
which really hurts me.
And you know, another thing that I really speak about, and I'm very passionate about it, and I write about it, and when I'm asked, I always talk about it. And again, I draw from my own experience, delayed decisions. When you're looking at a developing country, things, I don't know the last time some of you were in Zambia, but I'm sure you will notice, even if you're here 6 months ago, you drive past a particular area and it doesn't even look the same. I live in Zambia, and sometimes if I haven't been to an area for a month, I'm lost. And you don't see that so much in developed countries or developed markets. But there's a growing middle income. There's improved economic sentiment. You're starting to see a lot of investment. And why is that important? If you're looking just to build your retirement home and it's for you and your family, I would say the discussion is slightly different. But if you're thinking, look, I want to get some property, even for the next few years, have it as an investment property, and you want returns, you need to be able to consider some of these factors. So in certain areas, it's like investments. They advise you don't buy at the top of the market. You've got to try and visualize what is up and coming. And it's the same for property. So you'll find that there's some areas that are coming up now that you might be thinking about, and you should think about them, because believe you me, in a developing country, a year from now, you'll be buying the same property or building this in the same piece of land at 30% higher. So there's a lot of development. And by us partnering with companies like Shares In, what we're hoping to do is allow you access to a database of information. They would be able to guide and say, look, this is our sense around this area. They have good statistics. This is the returns. Generally, what we see, the returns on investment are X%. And it gives you an indicator of where you think you might want to invest. And I always talk about my own experience. When I came to Zambia, I looked at the area, Foxdale, it was bush, and I thought, I'm not staying here, I'm going to be murdered. The houses are nice. And then I bought in the same place. I think then the house, a 3-bedroom house, it's a gated community, was around 650,000 kwacha. And 3 years later, I'm buying at $1 million. And that was the minimum. I'm getting a mortgage to pay over and above. And it's typical of a developing market. You will find that property prices just appreciate, and it is largely driven by development in the area. So if you're in Zambia, take a drive and try and see if there's anything coming up. Construction, office blocks. usually a ShopRite. And that will even guide you to say, this is an area where in 3 years' time, I could double my money. So those are some of the things that maybe would-be investors might be considering. But if you're thinking about, look, I've been in the States for a long time, eventually we all want to come home. I just want to build something and maybe have some relatives look after it. That's a different discussion because the types of areas you might be looking at might be very different. So those are things that you also need to consider. And when our customers come to us and ask to get a facility, sometimes they already have in their mind the best way to structure it. But we will sometimes guide to say, you know, you want to do this, but actually, rather than getting a construction mortgage, this might serve you better if you get this type of mortgage. And one of the reasons, or rather than getting a conveyancing mortgage, if you have another property, get an equity release, because then the conveyancing process is quite convoluted and a little bit more complex. So you won't get vanilla lending with us. We will look at every customer differently. We will assess you based on your income. And we realize that customers in the diaspora, every country is different. So sometimes it will take us a little bit longer, but that is because we don't apply a one-size-fits-all. So we try as much as possible to understand what is in that market, what is unique. And I will just make mention that recently, about 2 weeks ago, we were at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we want to tap into that. We're all government-owned institutions. We want to see how we can make this proposition easier for people in the diaspora. So we're talking about things like working with the missions in certain markets to make things like notarization more affordable for you. That's just one example. So we were discussing around some initiatives. So we're quite keen to grow in this space. We're very open to feedback. And believe you me, when you give us the feedback, it's not everything that we implement, but we listen and we do try to address, because we realize it's a global village. Now we have Zambians everywhere, and it's not possible for us to have one offering that meets everybody's needs. So I just thought also I would put that in context. But where we are today, we launched this product a year ago. And we can honestly say we have a portfolio of customers. It's small, yes, but it's growing, that we have lent to, some of whom we have never met in person. And I think that's a powerful thing, because it's very easy to say you have a diaspora offering and you're asking people in the diaspora to bring your dollars. That's easy. It's easy to attract funds, but it's not so easy to give them out. But we are able to do that. And we have customers we have not physically met, but yet we are able to offer them a solution. And we have a process that guides that. So I think I'll pause here. I'm very passionate about this. So if you leave me to it, I'll talk and talk and talk. So I'm going to pause here.
If it's okay, Dr. Kapato-Moyo, if I can just tap into something that the speaker mentioned.
Sure.
She was talking about tapping into the diaspora, and I appreciate that. I think as you have these conversations with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and whoever else is involved, if you could perhaps push for instance, for us in America, we are completely spaced out. But one thing that's worked for the Tanzanians that I think Zambia can emulate is having honorary consulates to disseminate that kind of information in a timely fashion. I submit.
That's a great point. Ms. Mwila, is that something that you guys have thought about or came up in conversation?
So thank you for that point. It is absolutely something we've looked at, and hence our quite a lot of ideas. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, we had quite a lot of ideas as to what we thought might work. But we also realized, and one thing, it was an open discussion that they admitted to us, is like, sometimes it's very difficult to reach Zambians in the diaspora, at least from the missions, the point of view, because they said there's that element of distrust at times. Why do they want to know? Why are they asking these questions? And you see, it's important. We're hoping to work with them to build that database, because you're absolutely right. I mean, we should be able to pass on information. The initiatives we're driving and working on with the ministry that needs to reach Zambians everywhere. But we realized that not many people, even I said, look, I lived in England for more than 30 years of my life. I only went into the High Commission when I had a problem and my passport expired or I needed a visa or something. And so we are also taking a second step to try and work with some of the diaspora networks. The challenge we acknowledged with the ministry is that there are a lot, and it's very difficult to know who's who. And hopefully there'll be an initiative to bring some cohesion to that process, to have some of them registered so that we have the right forums to tap into and to provide that information. But one thing you will see is we're going to partner with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and in their virtual meetings, we will participate a lot more and we'll find ways and means to get the right information. We were even looking at the possibility of traveling at some point to certain states to have clinics for Zambians who want to talk to us about how they can invest back home. So those, I think that feedback is really important. So thank you for that. We are starting that journey now.
So if I can just add one last thing and then I'll keep quiet. Just an FYI, it's easier for me to trust somebody like Musonda Kapata Moyo versus an incoming ambassador or outgoing ambassador, because that rotation, we don't know who's who. But I think if you have honorary consulates in each region, because most of us know each other, and then based on our relationships locally, then that information can be disseminated to the embassy or foreign affairs, wherever it needs to go. But that's just a minor point I wanted to make.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And it's something we also recognize. We have started linkages with some of the networks. But I must say they're quite a number. We're trying to see how we can work with, for example, the Atlanta Network with Zambians. They're quite a number actually. And yeah, so we are just also trying to build our own database, because we do realize actually a lot of Zambians will be a lot more comfortable building linkages through these various networks. So we've started that journey and we're very open and we speak freely. At the end of the day, we're very happy to be invited to speak, whether it's on radio or, we've done quite a few things. We're doing some podcasts. We're also going to start our own webinars at some point. We're using professionals, people to talk about the land system. For example, the conveyancing process in Zambia is, if you haven't been through it, it's quite something. So whatever expertise we can put across to help people make the right decisions, I think we're going to start making that. So if you are aware of networks that
Cynthia, you're muted. Oh, there you go.
I think I'm using my phone now, so I had an incoming call. My apologies. Yeah, so we're open to that, and we're happy to do that. And I assure you, I think this is the first time I've had the technical challenges on all devices. So I assure you, usually we run through this quite smoothly, and we have started that process. So if you do have specific networks you'd like us to engage, please do let us know. I'll share my contact details, Esther's details through the chair, and we can arrange another fora. And this time we'll make sure we don't have these technical challenges, so we can take you through our offering, the presentation. Thank you.
Oh, that was really, really nice. Very informative, actually. Does anybody have any questions? Because I have one or two before we close. Any questions for Ms. Mwila? Okay, so just first of all, just a comment before my question. You spoke about how if you don't go to one area for a month, you get lost when you go there because there's just buildings everywhere. I found that as a positive thing. I was in Zambia for nearly 4 weeks recently, and I just think that a lot of people have realized that owning your own property is the way to actually live. Reminds me of when I was younger, my father, who's late now, would say, when you have your own house, doesn't matter if you're eating dere, in your own house, because you have your own house. So that's pretty cool. So I'm happy that people are actually taking up this initiative to own homes. And also would like to learn more, obviously, about the land banks, because I think that's an easier way to buy property that's already been surveyed and is in trusted hands, so to speak. You mentioned about the databases that are available, that give information about return on investments and so forth. You could share that with me afterwards, then I'll post it back on the forums if possible. But Ivy has a question. And Ivy, before you ask the question, you should have invited us to your breakfast. But yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk about that later because it's a long one. Yeah, so my question is regarding the collateral that you expect the borrower to put up. So would you lend for, let's say the property, the collateral is sitting in another part of Zambia, pick any, and then the building is another part, or would you expect them to be interlinked?
So, Esther, do you want to pick that one up?
So yes, I can. Okay, so in terms of the collateral, I think earlier I mentioned we have different purposes for which we lend. So if you're borrowing for just to release equity on an existing property, of course we will ask what you're doing with the money, just because that's a requirement. But basically, you can utilize those funds for any purpose, probably any project and anywhere in the country, if it's construction or you would want to buy another property. But if you're borrowing for construction, probably that's where we then have to check that you are using the monies on the actual property that you pledged as security. Because ideally, as I mentioned, we can approve an amount based on the BOQ, the bill of quantity. So we expect that you are utilizing those funds on that property, because we'll actually do staged inspections as we do the drawdowns on the approved amount. So it's only in cases where you've applied for construction, and of course for outright purchase, you are buying that property. So if you are using the same property as security, then of course that should be the same property. But in terms of location, as I think earlier in the discussion, we were looking at where we have our branches. So we have branches everywhere. But also I think the advantage is that as Zambia National Building Society, we are able to finance, purchase, construction of property anywhere in the country, as long as, of course, we have the security document. So it should have either an occupant's license, a title deed. So those are the two that we accept. So we're able to finance anywhere, and we don't restrict ourselves to just property along the line of rail. So we're able to finance in any district, in any town, any province, as long as there's a security document provided for us to create that mortgage. Thank you. I hope that answers it.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's a question in the chat about step one for a layman. Where and how does one start? And will there be a team that details this with the diaspora? So as a layman, where do we start?
I love this question. I think my answer is firstly, it starts because a lot of people think through all the possibilities, but also all the impossibilities. Why it's so hard? You're not there. All these issues. I think the first point is connect with the team, and I'll ask Esther to just post in the chat. We also have an email for the diaspora, but you can also contact us directly. Connect with us, find out what you qualify for based on the income that you have. Like I said, every situation is different. And one thing I really like about our offerings that we don't have a one size fits all. We realize that people have different income streams. What we look for is income we can evidence, pay slips, income through your bank account. As long as we have that, and the one or two other checks that we do, we can lend to you. So find out what you qualify for. Then you have to decide, are you buying, are you building? Do you already have something in mind, or do you want us to help you? So I think that's the first process, is understanding what it is that you qualify for and what is your obligation. Does it fit in with within your surplus income? So a mortgage is a long-term commitment. Of course, you can repay it at any time, partial or full repayment, and we will not penalize you. But it's a commitment that you want to make for a few years. But we do have some clients who do short-term lending because they see an opportunity that they want to take advantage of.
Are there any more questions? Ivy, you still have your hand up? Are there any
Need
more?
to bring it down, sorry.
Any more questions? Okay, I know time is tight so for everybody there, but I also want to mention some points that have been raised here that maybe all of us can go away with. For example, Ms. Katongo spoke about some of the requirements could include your salary or business income, and for people in diaspora, the mortgages are 15 years long, which is actually not too bad. The interest rates, yeah, it's a point of discussion for a lot of people in diaspora, of course, at 16, 17, and 18%, but I think it's fair. But also the equity release is really interesting because I think it will allow people to, make improvements on their assets, so the assets are not falling apart. The things that I would like to follow through with is the notarization of documents. It's pretty expensive to be sending things to Zambia, back and forth. So I was wondering if you guys have a DocuSign, which is a platform we use in the States, for example, to sign anything. Do you have an online notarization platform like DocuSign?
Okay, so I'll start with that one. Sorry, it's a little bit noisy. I'm just writing my but
Yeah. Your connection is getting slower.
pardon?
The connection is getting slower for you, Cynthia.
With it? Oh, my apologies. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm saying, I don't know if you know, but there's a Diaspora Act which guides the way we actually look at documentation for lending to Zambians or for any transactions with non-resident Zambians. So that is our starting point, legislation. Whether it is right or wrong, we start from there. And what the legislation currently prescribes is that where there is a signature on the document, that must be notarized.
Okay.
So there's a difference between authentication, which can be done by a lawyer, a bank. It's a much more open list, and it's much more affordable. So those we will take for things like bank statements. We can allow your bank to certify. But for where you are signing your mortgage deed, for example, which is a legal document, at this point in time, it is prescriptive that it must be notarized, and that notarization must be physical, in the sense that they must be present in the country in which you are present. So you can't have someone who says, look, I know him, so I'll sign off. I hope that's clear. But we are, like I said, we're mindful. We know, I know, because I've lived in the diaspora and I don't know what it is now. But when I was in England, it was £50 a page. So I know the financial burden that sometimes comes with this. So what we do is, firstly, to help, we will not request for any original documents at outset. We will deal with you and ask you to scan the documents. At least let us get to a point where we have approved your application. And on that, based on that application, we will require original documents. So you're only going to courier your documents once. There are some documents that cannot be scanned. We can open accounts with scanned documents, but things like mortgage deeds, etc., we have to have the originals for them to be legally viable. So that is one thing. So we will not just ask you to send and then you don't qualify. We will make sure at the point we're requesting for you to proceed on that basis, you already know that we are able to give you a mortgage. That is one thing. The second thing we're doing in this space, like I mentioned, we're working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on two fronts. We want to work with the missions where they have a commissioner, a notary public in the actual High Commission, and see if they can partner with us so that they can offer these services, to people in the diaspora at a much reduced cost. Yeah, so that's the second thing. The third thing, we are working with our legal and the legal team from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to review the law, because maybe it's restrictive, we don't know, but we have to bear in mind it is a little bit of higher risk. It's opportunities for fraud, not from the customer per se, but because you're not there, it is easier for anyone else to intercept. So we've got to, even as we work to see if there's a way to streamline, we've got to bear those things in mind. Lastly, at the moment, we did agree an in-house policy where we are able to refund you some of the costs. So we will, once we disperse, we will discount it from the fee. We'll meet you part way, because we realize there is some financial burden to having these documents, but it is mandated by this act, and it's something we're looking at.
Oh, wow. Well, that's very nice. That's very nice. Oh, cool. So I think we're at the point where now you share your emails with us so we can give other people that want to, write to you and start this process. I think you said Esther was going to share the email. Esther, do you have that handy?
So maybe, Esther, you can type it in the chat.
Yeah.
We can also send you all the details that perhaps you can assist us to cascade. I'm happy to share my number as well, Esther's number, and then we have the general diaspora email, but please also take our specific emails as well. But I will say we do try to accommodate. We know there's a time difference, so we do speak to our clients. We'll find out what's the time difference. We'll schedule calls according to convenience, within reason, obviously, but we do accommodate the fact that our clients are in different time zones. And we communicate on WhatsApp, we have virtual calls. It's quite an easy process for us to communicate.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. I think Esther shared all information there, including Mlenga's. So I hope some people, take up this and start talking to you and start building in Minwood Ndeke. Before we actually close, what about the roads though? Like between the airport road and Minwood and Ndeke, the road is like, I don't know, like I don't want to describe it. Who's in charge of that kind of stuff? Building roads to suburbs. Is Cynthia gone?
Sorry, I am here. I was just trying to unmute.
Okay.
It's an interesting one. It really just depends, because I think also there's an element of the local government. It really just depends. The councils play a role. Yeah, what we do is where we have land, we come in and try and just navigate that, because we realize, look, it has to be accessible.
Yeah.
And some of the land we have bought, there's not really social development, but we've noticed once we've graded the roads, once we've provided some services, all of a sudden you'll see particular shops coming up. You'll see, so investment attracts investment. That's what I would say. So you may find you're in a remote area, but believe you me, the way things are developing in Zambia, a year from now, you may find that it's a completely different space. I always like to give the example of what's this area? So you know, Leopard's Hill area, New Kasama is really very difficult to afford right now. You can pay $100,000, $200,000 for a small piece of land. It just depends. It's prime land. But some of the areas that are coming up on the outskirts are affordable at the moment. But in a year's time, they'll be as expensive as New Kasama. And case in point, I don't know if you know Chifwema.
Yes, yes.
Yes, Chifwema was very affordable at the time. I also slept on the opportunity and missed it. But right now, it's as expensive as it's as expensive as New Kasama. It's very difficult to afford a place right now, depending on the particular area. So that's what I mean about developing markets. You've got to, things change very rapidly.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great point, and you're right about that. I know some people that properties over there in Chifwema. But your point about development, bringing more development. My mom has some flats in Mansa. She built them in a place that like nobody was really building. There was nothing there like the last 5 years. And then this year I go there, there's a Chappies, the big supermarket. Very nice mall and everything. And then suddenly there's just like hundreds of homes in that place. So yeah, that does happen quite a bit. So I'm going to follow up with, so Esther is going to give us emails. You can give them to me after the chat, Esther, that's fine. And then I'll just send them to our friends that have been interested in this talk. Does anybody else have questions before we close this discussion today? Okay, well, seeing no questions, do you guys have any last comments? You know, Cynthia, Esther, and Mlenga.
For me, firstly, again, I just wanted to extend my apologies, but I think we've had a good discussion. The only thing I will say is the whole issue around home ownership, getting a mortgage versus not getting a mortgage. There are a lot of decisions that need to be made. But you should, so I would say start, explore options, understand what it will cost you, and we will help you through that process. So I think those are the last remarks from me, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much for your talk and your availability and expertise. That was really nice, and be rest assured, this is going to help a lot of people just with clarity of what the processes are, and also knowing that they are free to invest in Zambia. I think this is the best time when things are up and up. Like you said earlier, the best time to start investing is now. If you sleep on it one day, then you find things have changed. So thank you so much, ladies, for your just generosity of time and expertise. So we shall see you on the WhatsApp and the emails.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Friday in Jakarta, so you can, go drink some wine or something.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, the meeting is gonna close now, and if anybody has any follow-up questions, you can just shoot me an email or WhatsApp, and I'll direct you to the right people.